Coming up, I'll talk about how the election results have produced a new mood in America. I'll talk about the Senate leadership race coming up this week, and also what happened in Kerry Lake's election for the Senate in Arizona. Michael Reagan, son of the former president, joins me. We're going to talk about Veterans Day. Today is Veterans Day, and we need to reflect on what veterans have done in our country, the sacrifices they make to keep us safe. I'll talk to Michael Reagan about some of the things he's doing for veterans and to keep the memory of veterans alive. Hey, if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube or listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify, please subscribe to my channel. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
We are just about 1 week from the historic election of last Tuesday, and it almost seems like there is a new mood in America. Debbie and I were in Charleston, South Carolina over the weekend. We just decided we're going to work like crazy through the election and then take a break and do a getaway. And almost whimsically, we came up with the idea of Charleston. Neither of us had been there. But I must say, and this is partly Charleston, but it's also partly the particular moment that we are living through in the country. We just saw a piece of Americana. We saw a city that was very upbeat. American flags were all over the place. People were in a very ebullient, kind of upbeat mood. There was a lot of Americana. And as I say, part of it, I think, is a tribute to the way that Charleston has preserved its sense of historic America. Of course, we went and visited the Fort Sumter, which is about 30-minute ferry ride from the city, just as that's where the Civil War began. And we also went to a Confederate museum and saw all these amazing artifacts. But the broader point I want to make is that I think the country in general, this is emphatically true of Charleston, but I think true everywhere. It's almost like we've just been through kind of an exorcism. And by that I mean the demonic spirit that seemed to have possessed America since 2008. This is the Obama spirit. This is the demonic dream of his father. It's almost like we cast that out finally. And when I put things in historical perspective, I think of it this way: you have Reagan, who came in 1980, just a year and a half after I first got to America. That we had a Reagan Revolution that, strictly speaking, lasted till 1988, but its effects lasted all the way until Obama. And since then, we've been living in Obama's America, to be honest. But Trump is the anti-Obama. Trump stood athwart that. That's why his election in 2016 was so disturbing to the left. That's why they did so much to try to root him out. And now he's back. And I'm not saying that the Obama spirit is going away, because I think far from returning to hell, this kind of demonic spirit is going to hover around Washington, D.C. It's going to be scowling. It's going to be seething. It's going to be plotting its revenge. So it's very important for Trump to seize the moment, to recognize that these opportunities don't come very often. Trump is going to have a Republican House, not a huge majority, but a majority nonetheless. And that means you have the speakership, and it means you have the leadership. You set the agenda. And also Trump will have the Senate, a Republican Senate. So Republican House, Republican Senate, Republican President, Republican Supreme Court, man, I think that this outstrips what we could even reasonably have hoped for, and yet here we have it. So it's important to not rest on your laurels, not do the Republican thing and just sit on your hands for 4 years, say, okay, well, we've saved the country, we're going to now wait things out, and no, there's a great deal to be done, and even if after you do it all, there will be more to be done to make America great again, but you need to start in the right way. And the first thing coming up this week is a secret vote for the leadership of the Senate. McConnell is out. He's not going to be the Senate leader, but who is? Apparently, there are 3 people in the ring. One is John Cornyn of Texas, Senator John Thune, and Senator Rick Scott of Florida. Now, 2 of those guys are a little bit more, well, not a little, some would say a lot, on the establishment wing of the party. They're not rhinos. They're not really leftists. It's wrong to use that kind of a language. And but they are center right. And that can be verified by looking at their kind of conservative or liberty rating. Here is Cornyn, 54%. Is he right of center? Yeah, not by much, but nevertheless, that's where he is. Thune, about the same. He's 51%. So these 2 guys are ideological soulmates. They're cousins. And then you have Rick Scott, whose liberty score is much higher, 86%. So of the 3, from a conservative point of view, Rick Scott would seem to be the obvious preference. And yet, if you do a kind of early or a rough vote count, you would see that Rick Scott right now is not the favorite, or doesn't. You'd have more people, if you just did a secret vote, you'd find that more people would line up behind Thune or behind Cornyn. It's running roughly at about 10 or so votes for Scott, but more than that, and no one knows really the final count. There was a leaked estimate, but I don't want to rely on that. It looks like basically Thune may be running first, Cornyn second, and Scott third. But there is a massive social media campaign. I've been part of it a little bit by sharing some memes and some posts by other people. I haven't weighed in on it myself, but I've shared some content basically saying that Trump deserves to have leadership that's going to bring his agenda through. And I think that Thune and Cornyn would both be willing to do that to a degree. I don't think that any of these guys is going to offer open resistance to Trump. It's just a matter of whether some of them might work behind the scenes or at least be a little more sullen in the way that they carry that out. And now, I'm not clear why this is being done as a secret vote. And I think I know the answer to that. McConnell set it up that way because he wants people to be able to vote not for the Trump candidate without being held accountable for it. I think he knows that there would be a kind of molten rage if people voted in a vote that is perceived to be, if not anti-Trump, then it's undermining Trump in any way. And so with a secret ballot, the chances for Thune and the chances for Cornyn are better. If it was an open vote, I'm pretty sure Rick Scott would win it straight out. And so that's the first question, to see if we can change this. I'm not sure we can, but change it from a secret vote to an open vote. I also want to mention a somewhat wild idea that I don't think will in fact become real, but is worth thinking about, and that is a post by Red Eagle Politics. I've seen a few other people say the same thing. Can we make J.D. Vance, who is constitutionally the president of the Senate Majority Leader? And again, I'm not really sure why we can't do that. Now, J.D. Vance isn't running to be Senate Majority Leader. Typically, the Senate Majority Leader is different than the Vice President. Think about the Democrats, for example. They had Schumer as Majority Leader, and of course, Kamala Harris as the Vice President. And somehow the Democrats, even though they have something of an ideological spectrum as we do, they're able to get a tough-minded leftist, in this case Schumer, who can bring, if you will, the Democrats together. We need to be able to do that on the Republican side. So whoever the leader is, to be able to pursue a conservative agenda for a conservative party that just elected a conservative or MAGA president, but be able to bring the full batch of Republicans behind him. This is something that Republicans have not learned to do as well as Democrats have. Mitch McConnell, and to give Mitch McConnell his credit, over the years, he has done a lot to obstruct and block the left's agenda. He has not been a friend to Obama and the left. And at times when he was in opposition and the Democrats were trying to get things through, he was extremely effective in thwarting them. So I don't want to, although I have a lot of ill feeling toward Mitch McConnell for the ways in which he has, I think, hurt our side in the 2024 election, by the way. He put a lot of money, for example, behind the Maryland race, which was a loser. He refused to support Ted Cruz in Texas, which was, now Ted Cruz did win, but the Democrats had designs on that seat, and it makes no sense not to support Ted Cruz except out of just a kind of malice toward him. He didn't put $1 toward Kerry Lake's Senate race in Arizona, a race that was winnable by Lake, and I'll talk about that in the next segment because it looks like some funny business has been going on in that Arizona race. So all things considered, I'm not feeling too good about Mitch McConnell right now, but just wanted to give him credit for some of his past services to the cause and to the country. For those of us holding our breath for the past several months, we can exhale. Work can finally be done on the major issues the country is facing, one of the most significant being our national debt. The fact is, our nation is largely broke, and debt is a house of cards that can't quickly be dismantled. But the strategy for you, for me, remains the same. Diversify our savings. That's why Debbie and I buy gold from Birch Gold. So many things are out of our control, even out of the president's control. It's important to have a safe haven for your savings. Birch Gold Group, my gold company, will help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news, it won't cost you a penny out of pocket. How do you get started? Text Dinesh to 989898. Get your free information kit. Plus, right now through Black Friday, you'll get a free 1-ounce silver eagle for every $5,000 purchase. Diversify your savings with Birch Gold. Text Dinesh to 989898. Claim your eligibility for free silver today. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the increasing cost of health insurance? Have you had enough of not having control over your healthcare dollars? Introducing ShareRight. It's healthcare done the right way. At ShareRight, you're not just a number, you're part of a caring community. And forget about paying excessive premiums. With ShareRight, you stand to save 30 to 50% compared to health insurance. Think about what you could do with all those savings. But it's more than just savings. ShareRight ensures you have access to the care you deserve precisely when you need it, from routine checkups to unexpected emergencies. With ShareRight, your healthcare is their top priority. Empower yourself today. Take control of your healthcare costs. Visit shareright.org/Dinesh. Learn more. See how much you can save. Visit shareright.org/Dinesh. That's shareright.org/Dinesh for healthcare done the right way. I want to talk about the Senate race in Arizona, the race that has just been called for Ruben Gallego with 50% of the vote, and Kerry Lake 47.9%. And there seem to be some 40,000 or so votes separating the two of them. Now, as we went into Election Day, and this is an important race, let's remember that Arizona is a reddish state. It went for Biden in 2020, but almost certainly as a result of systematic cheating in a way described in 2000 Mules. It went for Trump in 2024, and it went for Trump in a fairly clean way. This was not a... So Trump wins pretty cleanly. He wins Maricopa County even more cleanly. And so Kerry Lake, riding on Trump's coattail, had every reason to believe that she would win Arizona. Yeah, Trump won Arizona by 52.6. Kamala Harris got 46.4. And here we see a pretty big margin, close to 200,000 votes. So now we have an anomaly. How is it possible for Kari Lake to lose? Are we saying that people voted for Trump and then voted for Ruben Gallego? What? Ruben Gallego is not. If people told me that some Arizonans voted for Trump and voted for the astronaut, who's the other senator, and then I would go, well, I suppose it's understandable. The guy comes across as pretty conservative and a regular guy, but Gallego is anti-Trump. He is on the left. And it makes absolutely no sense that anybody would vote Trump Gallego. And I was hopeful, by the way, that the Arizona race would go Kari Lake's way, even though Gallego was leading. Now, the odd thing about it is here we are almost a full week after the election, and we still don't have the final numbers from Arizona. Now, how is that possible? The election was largely called on Election Day. Most of the states, you know how Florida came in just an hour or two after the polls closed. Here are the results. Boom. And yet, oddly enough, in a couple of the other swing states, I'm thinking particularly of Arizona and Nevada, there was a kind of drag out of the counting. And the drag out almost appeared designed to keep Kari Lake's vote totals down. There would be vote dumps, and some of them would seem to favor Lake. It looked like Lake was even catching up. I saw Charlie Kirk talking on his podcast with Tyler Boyer, and they were saying, well, you know, the votes that are still to come are favorable to Kari Lake, and she should be able to pull this out. And then I saw that boom, they called the race. Now, who has been in charge of the counting in Arizona? It's the Maricopa County Recorder. In Maricopa County, this is Stephen, I guess it's Reicher, Richer. And this is a guy who hates Kari Lake. In fact, an email surfaced recently in which he talked about the fact that he hated Kari Lake. And so you have already a troubling situation. You've got a guy who wants Kari Lake to lose, and he's basically the referee for this in Maricopa County, which is a critical county with a large portion of the Arizona vote. This guy got blasted so badly on social media and specifically on X that he deactivated his X account. He just basically got off of X. And now let's look a little more closely at the vote totals here, because as I mentioned, you have Trump at 52.6 and Kamala Harris at 46.4. Kari Lake is by and large running alongside Kamala Harris, and Ruben Gallego is running alongside Trump. Now, Ruben Gallego doesn't quite have Trump's 52. Ruben Gallego has 49.7, but he's closer to Trump. Kari Lake is closer to Kamala Harris. And so we are now being asked to believe something that confutes any kind of common sense, which is that the same number of people who voted for Kamala, roughly, voted for Kari Lake. And the same number of people who voted for Trump, roughly, voted for Gallego. I refuse to believe that. That makes no sense at all. Now, to say that something is odd, makes no sense, is an anomaly, doesn't prove cheating. It's short. It falls short. But it does raise the question of whether this needs to be investigated. If the margin is close enough, there will be a recount, but a recount is not an investigation. An investigation is a little bit more, a deeper dive into how these numbers got to be the way they are, and whether or not this delay was an opportunity and really a mechanism to cheat, to alter vote totals, to bring in new votes out of sort of nowhere. I noticed that in Pinal County, which is a left-wing county in Arizona, they altered their vote total. Normally, you don't alter vote totals. You might say, oh, we haven't counted these votes. We've only counted these, but not these. It's a whole different matter to say, we came in on Election Day with 35,000 votes. And by the way, we just found 15,000 more after Election Day. Where do you find them? Where were they? Why didn't you count them? Why didn't we know about these votes before? How can a vote total change post-election day when you're not allowed to accept any ballots post-election day? Well, how did you make a miscount of your original total? All of these sorts of things. I feel bad. There are some people who are gloating about Carrie Lake. I saw Meghan McCain, who hates Carrie Lake. Carrie Lake was probably unwise in the last time she ran for governor to bash the McCain family, because I think the McCain family is one of those families that holds a vendetta. They've had a kind of a vendetta against Trump. They have a vendetta against Carrie Lake. And so Meghan McCain was just absolutely celebrating Carrie Lake's defeat, even though that means the election of a Democrat. And I'm sure Meghan McCain remains moderately conservative. But I think in this case, personal factors. And we see this also with the Cheney family. So it's not entirely new. But I do feel bad for Carrie Lake because I do think she's an excellent candidate. I do think that she was robbed of the governorship the last time. I was hoping that she would get, as Trump did, a vindication this time by winning for the Senate. I think she would have been a great Trump ally in the Senate. So I hope that this is not the end of the story. Some people are saying, well, Trump should make Carrie Lake his press secretary. She should have an appointment in the Trump administration. But before we even think or talk about that, I would like to see a full inquiry into what has happened and what is happening in that Arizona race to see if Carrie Lake was somehow deprived of a victory that is lawfully hers. The story of MyPillow is a testament to faith and transformation. Mike Lindell, once battling addiction, found a new path when he embraced faith and began following Jesus in gratitude. Mike is excited to share an exclusive offer with our listeners. Right now, the standard MyPillow is available for just $14.88. This is a savings that's too good to pass up. There's a limit of 10 per customer, so don't wait. Take advantage of this amazing deal now with promo code Dinesh. Mike believes God gave him the idea for MyPillow in a dream, and it's designed with your comfort in mind. The pillow holds its shape. It adapts perfectly to your unique sleep position, helping keep your neck aligned for the best night's sleep. And there's more. Take home a 4-piece kitchen set for just $25. Enjoy the new mattress topper starting at just $99.99. Or pick up the luxurious MyPillow bed sheets starting at $49.98. Great deals all around. Here's the number to call, 800-876-0227. Again, it's 800-876-0227. Or go to mypillow.com. Use promo code Dinesh to unlock huge discounts. Don't miss out. Order today. We are in a new era, and if you would like to support my work, the best way to do it is to become an annual subscriber to my Locals channel. I post a lot of exclusive content there, including content that you won't see anywhere else, sometimes censored on other social media platforms. On Locals, you really get Dinesh Unchained, Dinesh Uncensored. On Locals, you can interact with me directly. I do a live weekly Q&A every Tuesday. It's really fun. No topic is off limits. I've also uploaded some cool films to Locals. I've got Dinesh's movie page up there, 2000 Mules, the film that came out last year, Police State, also the new film, Vindicating Trump. By and large, if you're an annual subscriber, you can stream and watch this movie content for free. It's included with your subscription. So check out the channel. It's dinesh.locals.com. I'd love to have you along for this great ride. Again, it's dinesh.locals.com. Guys, I'm delighted to welcome back to the podcast an old friend, an old acquaintance. It's Michael Reagan, the son of the legendary Ronald Reagan. Actually, I came across Michael Reagan in his days as a conservative radio talk show host. I was delighted to be on his show many times. And he is now doing amazing things at the website is Reagan Legacy Foundation.org. You can follow Michael Reagan at Reagan World. He's the president of the Reagan Legacy Foundation. Michael Reagan, welcome. Thank you for joining me. We are, I think you'd have to say, at a pretty historic moment. And one that we've seen before with your dad, Ronald Reagan. And let me offer a kind of a brief analysis and have you sort of react to it, because I think that under Reagan we had a a lasting revolution, some of which, by the way, some elements of which endure to now. Mm-hmm. But the Reagan Revolution was powerful enough to take us from 1980, I believe, to about 2008. And I say that because I think Obama comes in with a very conscious project of, in his own words, remaking America, which I take to mean undoing the Reagan Revolution, making a different kind of America. And the Democrats have worked very hard at that in Obama's 2 terms, now, of course, continuing with Biden-Harris. And then here we have Trump now coming in for a second time and saying, kind of, this time we're going to get it right. This time we're going to get the job done. And make America great again, which to some degree I think means restoring some of the optimism, the entrepreneurship, the sense of possibility that was there in your dad's era. What do you make of this analysis, and how are you feeling about America in this particular moment of history?
Well, I'm not leaving California now, so we're good. I think because we have a new DA,
yep,
we passed Proposition 36, so I feel safer and better, what have you. But some of you left out. Both of these men, Morning in America and Let's Make America Great Again, both men were not politicians. Both men came from the private sector into politics because they cared and felt so highly of the United States of America and had lived long enough to see what the left can do, what progressives could do, what communism could do. And so they didn't get tainted by politics and the people within that game. And it is a game. And they were able to march forward. My dad, Morning in America, I wrote an op-ed piece last week. I said the left is Morning in America, MOURNING, instead of Morning in America. So it's good to see us. It's good to see us wake up to these things and understand what the left is doing and what they have done over the past umpteen years since Obama, if you will, because I don't remember racism like racism is today until Obama comes into the system and brings racism back to the forefront. And they've been playing that card and playing that card and playing that card. And I think people finally said, you know, we're done with the card. I just want better prices at the grocery store. I want to feel safe again. I want to feel the things that Trump is talking about, because Trump had a message and they've never had a message. Instead of tearing apart the Republican that is in fact running against him, as they did to my father, as they've done to Trump, or tried.
You were, you were in media and also a student of media. And while the media was left-wing, I mean, they were clearly biased against your dad. They would come up with all kinds of sneering accusations against him. He's a washed-up movie actor. You know, he's a reckless man that will propel the world closer to nuclear war. You've heard it all. And yet it seems like the temperature of the attacks on Trump, and not to mention the level of propaganda from the media. I'm now talking about things like outright lying, or things like, here is an event that occurs, they will just not cover it no matter what. A good example of that, of course, being the Hunter Biden laptop. You just you get it either censored or you get it off the pages of the newspaper. How do you think the media went from being biased or bad to really worse, what we have today?
They weren't winning. They just weren't winning. And they had to say, what can we do to help our side win? I mean, you're right. We had a lot of people against my father in the media back then, but they were still reporting news. Today, they don't report the news. They give you the opinion on the news, their opinion, in fact, on the news. And thank goodness for outlets like, Fox and Newsmax and others could show what was going on. Remember, nobody watching MSNBC or CNN knew there was a problem at the border. They'd never see anybody at the border. Only Fox had anybody at the border. And they were surprised. So it was genius how the governors finally stepped up and said, we're going to let them see the border. We're going to start busing people to New York, to Manhattan, to Martha's Vineyard. We're going to start busing people there so they can see what we're dealing with. And it wasn't until then that America started to wake up and say, whoa, wait a minute. There is a problem, at the border. And the only person talking about it was, in fact, Donald Trump. And so the media's completely changed. And that's what's really sad. They just became another arm of the progressives or the far left. And they're still doing it today. I mean, Trump's now won, and they're still doing it. They're doubling down on these things like, well, we just weren't tough enough. Well, you had a candidate that never was voted on. You had a coup against the president of the United States to put her in the place of the president of the United States. And now you have some of these fools actually calling for Biden to step down and make her president before the 20th of January. I mean, these people are certifiably nuts. And I think America figured it out. And I wrote an op-ed piece, about what I said to Trump 2015 when he called me. He said, I'm thinking of running for president of the United States as a Republican. What do you think? And I said, honestly, I think you'll destroy the Republican Party. Do you have another question? And we sat there and talked. He said, well, I didn't know your father, but I liked your father because I like your father. I like you. I said, well, thank you. He says, if I win, can we have a Reagan Day at the White House? Would you bring your family? I said, of course. I said, if you do that, we'll have a Trump Day at my dad's ranch, and you're invited to a Trump Day at the ranch. He said, okay. I said, good luck, goodbye. And that was it. But what I wrote in the op-ed piece was, I was right. He destroyed the Republican Party. But he had to destroy the Republican Party to rebuild the Republican Party what it is today, with bringing in more blacks, bringing in more Hispanics, bringing in more women, bringing in more young people to win. Because you and I both know Republican Party isn't large enough to elect anybody. We have to have other people on board in order to win these big elections. And so he destroyed it to rebuild it to the point where he can win like he won on Tuesday.
I mean, this raises to me a very interesting question, which is that, and may call for a little bit of frankness on both our parts. I mean, wouldn't you say that the Republican Party, which was very strong and doing very well under both terms of Reagan, in fact, I think it's unquestionable that George H.W. Bush was elected in the wake of the success of your dad.
Yes.
The Reaganism persisted in the 1990s, even though your dad was out of office. I think most people recognized, hey, the Soviet Union collapsing, all of that was the result of policies and actions taken by your dad. But it does seem, I think, in fairness, for all the good things that they did, that the brand of the Republican Party was destroyed in some ways in the Bush era. It became identified with things that your dad was not identified with, such as committing large amounts of troops to conflicts abroad. And so when you say that Trump remade the Republican Party, I think part of the remaking was necessary because the Republican Party, after your dad, went on a bit of a different track. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I agree with that. In fact, I mentioned in the op-ed piece also. But you got to understand, you had H.W. Bush, who was a good friend and just treated my family so well. And I was there when my dad actually called him on the phone, or Ed Meese called him on the phone to be the VP and what have you. But where the mistake he made was, I don't want to be the third term of Reagan. Therefore, I'm going to start dismantling things that Reagan did and put them in my image instead of the Reagan image. And that's where he started to go wrong. And that's why he only served one term and he was out, because he started to dismantle the Republican Party that was under Reagan. And you're right. And that caused the friction and the problems that we have had for a very, very long time. And unfortunately, politicians do that at times. You had, I wrote the other day, I said, Kamala lost, but who really lost was Obama, because he was looking for his fourth term. And now he doesn't get one.
Wow. Let's talk about the work you're doing now, the Reagan Legacy Foundation. Update us on what's happening and how are you spending your time these days?
Well, back in 2001, when the USS Ronald Reagan was commissioned in Norfolk, my wife and my family decided, what can we do to help the kids on the ship? And so we started a program to supply scholarships to the men and women who serve aboard the Reagan, but also to supply scholarships to their family members left at home who are waiting for them to return. And many people don't know, as you know, that if you're left at home and your family member's on a ship for 6 months, you're serving as much as they are. And so we help them with scholarship money also. But we decided to expand that not too long after that, because we'd been to Normandy, France, my dad's great speech in 84, Point de Hoc and what have you. What can we do? And we've been to St. Mary Glee's, first town freed by America, D-Day morning, became friends with the children of the D-Day mayor, who are now my age, and said, what can we do? And we started a brick project. We got a piece of land there at St. Mary Glee's, Normandy, France, at their museum, their whole thing, to be able to start putting bricks in. So we started offering bricks at ReaganLegacyFoundation.org, $250, 501c3, 100% deductible. And you can go online and order a brick with the name of a loved one or someone you knew who served the European theater in the Second World War. And we'll get the brick in the ground, and you'll get a picture of it. If you don't know anybody, but you want to help, send a $250 check to Reagan Legacy Foundation, put in the memo, brick project. We have plenty of names we can put on bricks, and we'll send you a picture and the story of that soldier that leaped out of a plane on D-Day or after. We'll send you their story so you can live through them and help memorialize those who actually saved the world. And we have to end it December 31st this year. We take the last order because we've actually run out of room in the area that they've given us. But it's been a great project for us, great project to memorialize those who, allow us to do, Dinesh, what we're doing.
When I came to America in 1978, there were plenty of World War II veterans walking around. And I remember, for example, sitting down with Edward Teller, the inventor of the hydrogen bomb, when he was describing all the hearings and all the stuff he had been through. And of course, he knew your dad, and your dad, the two of them actually did some plotting together on some things. But what I'm getting at is that here we are now in 2024, and all of that is now receding into memory. And I think what you're doing, and it's a very noble task, is now it's time to build the statues, right? And now it's time to create the things that will last for, let's say, the next 100 years, so people can look back and remember these great episodes and great moments of history which saved America, but also saved the world.
It's interesting that there's a statue of my father in Poland, Gdansk, Poland, with Pope John Paul there. There are statues of my dad all over the world, but God forbid try and put one in America. It's really interesting. Everybody else recognizes it, except for America, and that's what's really sad. We don't teach history, and that I learned history from my parents. We can't expect somebody else to teach our children history. We've got to teach them that history. We've got to teach America how to love again. We forgot how to love America. One thing about Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump is both of them love America to the nth degree. That's why they came out of the private sector and ran for office in the first place, because their love of America and her people. And they lived long enough to be at the Second World War and see what that did, and the tragedy of that, and the Vietnam War and the Korean War and all that. Generation today has no idea what happened. I played golf with a young man, 25 years old. I told him I was headed to France and to Normandy to raise the American flag at the American cemetery. He said, why is there an American cemetery at Normandy? Had no idea, no concept. And this is more normal than anything else. So we have to start teaching our kids the history, the great history of this country, and get America and these young people to love America and know why they love America. I was taught through my dad, and we need to just have more parents stand up. My son Cameron takes his 8-year-old and his 6-year-old. They'll be up at the library today. A couple of years ago, they were at the American Cemetery there in Westwood, that's being redone, which is phenomenal. Teaching them He's now got a boy, almost 2 years old. You'll love this, Dinesh. My grandson, his name is Gage. I nicknamed him 12.
I like it.
I'm waiting for his first day in school. What's your name, Gage? My grandpa calls me 12.
12. I just saw, today a comment. It may have been an article somewhere that, it's very ironic that Trump is about to assume the presidency a second time. Historians have rated him the worst president in our country's history. And I thought, wow, what a reflection, not so much on Trump, but on the community of historians that do this kind of ranking. And I remember over the years having seen these rankings. Now, look, I mean, I agree with Abraham Lincoln as putting him at the top. I agree, of course, with Washington up there. But I'll notice that people like Obama, Jimmy Carter, Clinton, these guys will be higher than your dad. And I think to myself, what kind of twisted perspective do you have to put Jimmy Carter? Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, but look at the movie Reagan. 17% of the critics thought it was a terrible movie, got 17%. But if you went and saw it, it was at 98%.
Yeah.
It's the largest disparity ever in the history of Hollywood movies. And it doesn't change. Whether it's the movie or whether it's what you're looking at now, this is who they are and what they are. And they don't get it. They don't know how to get it and what have you. And it's really sad. But they're going to keep on losing if they're going to keep these things going forward. That's just filled with hate. When everybody can see the forest through the trees, they don't, and people see that. I mean, again, the Reagan movie, 98%. If you went and saw it, 98% approval. If you're a critic, 17%. Don't go see it. It's a terrible movie.
Guys, I've been talking to Michael Reagan, president of the Reagan Legacy Foundation. The website is reaganlegacyfoundation.org. Follow him on X at Reagan World. Michael Reagan, thank you very much for joining me.
Hey, good to be with you again. Thank you, Dinesh. Appreciate it. Anytime.
I'm continuing my discussion of fascism, Nazism, and the big lie. And every day we see confirmation of the timeliness, the relevance, the how cutting edge this topic is. Because now with Trump's election a second time, you see a whole wave of comment to the effect that fascism has now come to America. I just saw an article this morning in the New Yorker. It can happen here. This is alluding to the idea that fascism is not just something that happens in Europe or in other countries. It can happen here, and it has happened here. That was the point of the article. Here's Bill Kristol. The numbers paint a sobering portrait of the world's oldest democracy. Most Americans don't want explicit autocracy, but many Trump supporters are open to it. So the message here is that autocracy, tyranny, has come to America. Come, by the way, not from the Democrats, not by systematic censorship, not by all the stuff that they're doing, but somehow Trump now represents the return to autocracy. I see this from Joe Walsh, the former Republican congressman, and also from others that, hey, we can't even really blame Trump. Of course, he's a fascist, but what the election results show that the American people are choosing fascism. Now, one is tempted to respond to this in the conventional way of saying, well, no, that is not what fascism means. You're describing fascism in such a peculiar way that you are twisting and distorting the meaning of it. You're stripping it of its ideological meaning. And I will make all of these points as we go through this book, The Big Lie. But I just want to draw out one implication that all the people who are crying fascist and crying Hitler don't seem to realize. And that is, let's for a moment take them at their word. Let's for a moment say, all right, let's just agree with you. And look at things from your point of view. You've been warning that Hitler is coming, and now you're telling us that Hitler is here. But first of all, you're not acting as if Hitler is here, because let's take Bill Kristol, or let's take the woman who writes for the Washington Post. Her name slips me now. Jennifer Rubin. That's it. All right. First of all, Bill Kristol and Jennifer Rubin are Jewish. And so they know what Hitler represents. They know what Hitler is here means. And what Hitler is here meant for the Jews in Germany was basically time to get out. Pack up. Sell all your stuff. Convert all your money into jewelry and hide the jewelry in your clothing and make plans to get your family out because Hitler is here. And there was a grim seriousness about it for the Jews who fled Germany in the early years of Hitler before things got really bad. But there's no one on the left who's behaving like that. And so you have to ask, do they really mean what they say, or are they, I won't say joking, they're not really joking, but they're lying. They're exaggerating. They're conjuring up a threat that even they know not to be true. Why? Because they're not acting like it. They're still here. They talk about things like, well, I'm really going to mount a resistance. That's it? You're going to mount a resistance? Aren't you going to prepare for life in a concentration camp? Isn't that what it means to say Hitler is here? So my point is they don't really mean it. And a second implication I want to draw out that I haven't seen anyone really make this point is that, again, let's accept what the left is saying at face value. Let's say that they're saying, as they are saying, that the American people voted for fascism. The American people knew exactly what Donald Trump represents. They might not have known it the last time. This is part of Joe Walsh's point. They're like, in 2016, maybe people didn't know. They didn't know what they were getting. But now they know. Now they know what they're getting, and they still voted for it. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if that's true, think how badly your side must suck. In other words, you're telling me that the American people were faced with a choice. You warned them. You said to them, hey, listen, this guy's a fascist. And so the only reason to vote for him is if we, the Democrats, are offering you something worse than fascism. I mean, think about it. The only reason to vote for Hitler is if the other side is worse than Hitler. And apparently that's what the American people decided. To the degree that the left says, oh yeah, this guy's Hitler, the American people must have said, well, you know what? Even Hitler is preferable to the absolute horror that you represent, to what you've been doing to the... We'll take our chances on Hitler. That's what they're really saying, that people ultimately, after all, are going to vote for their best option. And from the Democrats' own point of view, the best option is the guy that they are calling a fascist. They are calling Hitler. All right. Now, let's turn to the text of the big lie, and I'll probably just make a single point for today because I've been railing against some of the never Trumpers, the Bill Kristols of the world. And so I want to make the point here that I was talking the last time about how Jonah Goldberg's liberal fascism addresses fascism, but it doesn't address Nazism. And I said this is actually where this book, my book, takes off. And the reason that you can't exclude the issue of Nazism here is because of the ties between the Nazis and the progressives. I'm talking about the ties between the Nazis in Germany and the American progressives. And you might say, oh, what ties? Well, there's a story to tell here, and we're going to get to it. I'm also going to talk about the ties between the Nazis and the Democrats. And I'm talking about the Democrats in FDR's coalition. And again, you say the ties between the Nazis and the... I thought FDR had led us to war against the Nazis. Well, he led us to war against the Nazis in 1939. Well, he didn't actually lead us to war in 1939. America didn't get involved in the war till 1941 when Pearl Harbor was attacked. But let's remember, FDR was elected in 1932. So what was FDR's attitude toward fascism and Nazism between 1932 and 1939 before World War II? Don't know much about that, do ya? Well, you're not expected to. Our textbooks don't talk about it. The History Channel doesn't talk about it. Why? Because we have been subjected to a massive intellectual cover-up. A cover-up aimed at disguising, muting, hiding, concealing, distorting the ties between the fascists and the Nazis on the one side and the American progressives and Democrats on the other. I've mentioned also before that racism is an issue that divides or separates fascism from Nazism. And so, for example, interestingly, the Italian fascists under Mussolini were a lot less racist than, say, the Democrats under Woodrow Wilson and FDR. The Democrats, interestingly, resembled the Nazis more than they resembled the fascists in the sense that they had the racist element. I mean, there's National Socialism or Nazism was defined by racism. Racism was a key element. Racism and anti-Semitism were key elements of what the Nazis represented, and they were also key elements of what the Democrats represented. So, for example, consider the doctrines of white supremacy. The Nazis believed it. The Democrats believed it. Mussolini didn't really believe it. Think about racial segregation. The Nazis favored it. The Democrats favored it. Mussolini didn't have any interest in it. State-sponsored discrimination. The Nazis were all for it. They practiced it. The Democrats practiced it in America. Mussolini didn't really care about it. These things were not, Mussolini was fundamentally not driven by race. He was not even fundamentally driven by anti-Semitism. In fact, the early fascists there was a disproportionate number of Jews around Mussolini that were helping him create a fascist state. Here's an interesting line from Robert Paxton's The Anatomy of Fascism. Robert Paxton is a political scientist at Columbia. He's actually a man of the left. He doesn't like to stress the left-wing element in fascism or in Nazism. But he does say this. He goes, "It may be," I'm not quoting him, "that the earliest phenomenon that can be functionally related to fascism is American, the Ku Klux Klan." Very interesting statement. And it's a statement that needs to be paired along with another statement that was made by the historian Eric Foner. Eric Foner says the Ku Klux Klan was the domestic terrorist arm of the Democratic Party. And here's Robert Paxton saying, guess what? If the Klan can be identified with the Democratic Party, as it can, there were some close resemblances between the Ku Klux Klan in America and the Nazis over in Germany. Well, I'll just leave it here with that phrase, with that comparison marinating in your mind. We'll pick it up and develop it a lot further. But to finish off the quotation from Paxton, he goes, long before the Nazis, he says, the Klan adopted its racial uniform of robes and hoods and engaged in a type of intimidation and violence that offered, quote, a remarkable preview of the way fascist movements were to function in interwar Europe. So remember, the fascists had goons, as the Nazis did. In Nazi Germany, they were the brown shirts. Mussolini, of course, had the black shirts, and these were street thugs. Very similar to the Ku Klux Klan, and by the way, as we'll see in interesting ways, very similar to our own Antifa rioters. And these are people enforcing a certain kind of conformity on the street. And so it may seem surprising to have a left-wing historian say, gee, let's look at the Ku Klux Klan. It kind of resembles the fascists and the Nazis. But the interesting thing with Robert Paxton is that he doesn't really go on to tell you that the Ku Klux Klan was closely connected to the Democratic Party. So he tells you, yeah, it's a lot like the Klan, but he leaves the impression, if you're stupid enough to believe it, that somehow the Klan was ideologically unaffiliated. You may even think that the Klan was part of the right or the Republican Party. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Klan was closely connected institutionally to the Democratic Party. It was founded, by the way, by Nathan Bedford Forrest, who was one of the delegates to the Democratic National Convention, a prominent Confederate general. It was revived by a progressive president, which is Woodrow Wilson. And so what we're doing in this book and what we're doing today, and we'll continue doing it, is just completely turning over the stones that reveal the degree to which the roots of fascism and Nazism have been concealed. Once you know those roots, you'll never be able to see our politics in quite the same way again. And every time you hear some left-wing pundit talk about fascism, probably your reaction, at least your initial reaction, will be to chuckle.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.